Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. Further to the Secretary General Antonio Guterres' visit today, he's termed what he calls insanity for the lack of response of the international community to the floods in Pakistan. He talked about how it's collective suicide for us to ignore, as the world to ignore the kind of climate damage and the kind of climate change effect that we've seen in Pakistan. He also said that this is more than 33 million people in Pakistan that have been impacted and affected by floods. Also the damage he termed to the tune of about $30 billion, imploring the international community to commit as many funds as possible to the humanitarian cause, this humanitarian cause as far as Pakistan is concerned. The UN Secretary General talked about the plight of the people, the kind of diseases that are likely to run rampant pursuant to the kind of flood damage that we've seen. He also talked about more than 4,500 medical camps that have been set up by the WHO. He spoke about more than 30,000 rapid tests which have been conducted for acute watery diarrhea, malaria, dengue, hepatitis, and numerous other waterborne diseases that Pakistan is under threat after the kind of damage that we've seen. We'll be talking about what we can expect from the international community in terms of aid. We also saw the Prime Minister accompanying the UN Secretary General, the Foreign Minister also, and updating him on the kind of damage that Pakistan has suffered as a result of climate change. We'll be talking about the lack of response that we've seen as far as the international community is concerned, or the kind of empathy that we would like the international community to show Pakistan at this time. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Dr. Hameed Khan Al-Mashriqi, who is an IR expert. He's also a senior journalist. Thank you so much for joining us today. We also have with us Nasir Ali Khan, who's a former ambassador. Thank you for joining us. And Dr. Niaz Murtaza, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to start off with you, Dr. Hameed. As far as the damage, of course, I mean, there are no two opinions about the kind of damage that we have seen, the kind of damage that, of course, the UN Secretary General himself saw today, the kind of, and what it means for the future, for many years to come for Pakistan. When we talk about diseases that will likely run rampant pursuant to that damage, when we talk about the kind of the threat to livelihood, the damage to livelihood, the scarcity of food that we are seeing, that we are likely to see for years to come. We've seen people literally watch their lives being swept away in front of them. And the kind of response that we've had from the international community, certainly to say that there has been no response would be wrong. But then, of course, at the end of the day, the fact is that Pakistan has about 0.1% share of fuel emissions, carbon emissions, and yet it is suffering. And nations that have the money, that developed nations, the first world, so to speak, that can do more for Pakistan, that is responsible for these emissions, needs to step up. And this is also something that the Secretary General talked about. What is your view about the kind of response that we've seen and the kind of response that we can perhaps expect from these nations, Dr. Hameed?
Thank you very much, MAHRUKH. As you have explained everything, I would like to say that the response from the rest of the world is not enough at all, first of all. Secondly, I think I would like to explain it a kind of a comparison, what exactly the devastation of this flood is. If you look into it, it says that over 1/3 of Pakistan's been, flooded. It means it's over 260,000 kilometer square area, which is more than the entire United Kingdom. I'm just giving a comparison. Then over 33 million people have been displaced or been affected by this flood, which is again over half of the population of entire of United Kingdom. And then if you look into it, over 4,000 kilometers of roads has been swept out. which means it is entirely infrastructure is gone. Oh, millions of people are displaced, hundreds and thousands of houses being demolished, I should say. So if you look into the entire situation, while I mean it's millions of crops have been affected as well. So Pakistan's loss is going to is not nothing less than 40 billion, and it will take many years for Pakistan to recover with the help of the rest of the world. This is the time when Pakistan needs a help on a humanitarian basis. It is one of the biggest calamity in the present world, and it is not that world can close their eyes. I mean, if you look into the figures, what they have come with the help to Pakistan, I was really getting upset with it, to be honest. $30 million from USA, along with few thousand of medicines and aid. Then 30-40 million from China. Again, they have helped us much more with the other equipment and other medicines
Dr.
and
Hameed, let me
tents.
interject here. When we talk about the world reacting, or when we talk about the developed
Exactly.
nations reacting, it's also a question largely of reparation, because this is also of
Yes.
owning up, of taking responsibility, and this is what the UN Secretary
Yes.
General also spoke about at length when he said that it is
Yeah.
not just a case of Pakistan simply asking for help. It is that also, and we expect and want empathy from the world. But at the
Exactly.
same time, this is also a case of them owning up to their share of those
Yes.
fuel emissions, and Pakistan being at the
Yes.
receiving end, and the injustice of it, which is also very
That's
stark and there for everyone to see.
absolutely right. I mean, Pakistan, I mean, if you look into the figures of global warming, if you look into the entire situation, I mean, Pakistan's contribution towards the carbon in the world is nothing as compared to the modern world. And they have not done much enough. And Pakistan's glaciers or Pakistan's whole environmental, balance is out now. It's because of this modern world, which they could not take enough measures. And now it is their obligation, Maruf, it is their obligation to take the responsibility. I'm not saying not only ownership, it is their obligation that they should help Pakistan, and for the future as well, they have to plan out something where Pakistan can be secure from future calamities like that.
Let me come
It
back
is the
to you,
matter of the
Hamid Saab. Let
humanity.
me come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Niaz Murtaza. Niaz Saab, also the question of what it means for Pakistan, the food inflation, the likely result that we've also we're experiencing that anyway. At this time, we're in the midst of an economic crisis. We were before the floods started. We were grappling with a very, very dire economic situation to start off with. But after this damage that we've seen, this unprecedented loss to livelihood, to crops that we've seen, we can expect a sharp rise there also, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we need to understand, the background from which, the Pakistanis have been suffering for the last 4 to 5 years. It started with the 2018 economic crisis, and then, after that, immediately there was a COVID crisis, and then again, towards the end of the PTI government, there was, even a more severe economic crisis than even 2018. And for the last 3 or 4 years, inflation has been in double digits, and then in recent months, because of the steep depreciation of the rupee, then because of the sharp increase in oil prices, the Ukraine war, all of these have added up to create a huge economic crisis. And on the back of that, we have these huge floods, and we must remember that Pakistan is now the only country in the world which has suffered three huge natural crises since 2000. The 2005 earthquake, the 2010
Nyasa, when
floods.
we talk about mitigation, or we talk about mitigating factors, as far as the responsibility of owning up, which what Dr. Hameed talks about when he says that it's not just a question of asking the international community for help, it's also a question of them owning up or taking responsibility for what is largely damage that is stemming from their carbon emissions, their fuel emissions. The question is, our preparedness is also something of an issue here. But to what extent would you blame Pakistan, if we can talk about, the kind of preparedness or lack thereof that we have seen for many years to come?
Well, if you look at, the amount of rain, the data, it's, two, three times higher than what, happens normally. So even if we had good preparation for, the average kind of rain we have, it would not have been sufficient. So the large part of the blame goes to, the fact of the climate change and the rich countries like USA, China, and European Union being responsible for it. But since our colleague has already covered that in fairly extensive detail, I'll focus on, my our own role in this, which doesn't mean that I'm saying that the bulk of the responsibility lies with us. But there are so many things. Disaster management, disaster preparedness is a fairly advanced science now around the world. If you look at countries like Bangladesh, which are also very disaster prone, they have extremely elaborate systems starting from the national to the provincial to the local level, and that's where we lack. First of all, we don't have proper disaster mitigation measures in place, so desiltation doesn't take place properly over the years. So the riverbed has risen, so it's easier for the place to get flooded. Then we don't build protective walls wherever there is. And then there is the fact of early warning. That's the last step before anything comes in. There should be early warning, because it's pretty easy to predict when the rains are going to come. So none of those factors are in place, and especially at the district level, we are supposed to have disaster district management agencies. Normally consist of an assistant commissioner, also holding 5 or 6 other portfolios with no expertise in disaster management, no equipment, no resources, no team. So all of it adds up, make the situation. And then finally, the relief side of it, there is also the fact that we basically killed the NGO sector over the last 5 or 6 years.
Let me go to Nasir Ali Khan Saab. Ji, Nasir Saab, can you hear me? Ji, Ambassador Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Ji, I want to talk about the role, we have seen, I'm sure you've been following also the visit of Antonio Guterres and the way that he's championed the cause for Pakistan as far as the flood damage is concerned. But overall, the role of international community, in your opinion, and what we can realistically expect, considering, of course, the background, in the sense that this is a post-COVID world, there are numerous challenges, the war in Ukraine. Overall, the international scenario, what can we expect, in your opinion, realistically speaking?
At best, I feel we can expect immediate assistance. The Pakistani side and the Secretary General's office have agreed on a sum of $160 million, which is required for immediate assistance. So at best, I can expect that. But
he's talking about a damage of about $30 billion.
Oh, indeed.
Exactly.
But I feel that Pakistan obviously needs to be prepared when these disasters are recurring so frequently. But then the scale of this particular disaster was such that I think even if we had a civilized or advanced country with a very good disaster management system, even they could not have. I mean, you must have seen cases of huge fires in countries like the US and in Australia, where they have very efficient and very large, disaster management systems. But because of the scale of the disaster, it is just simply not manageable even for them. So this particular flood was very, very unusual. As you know, it was, the largest flood in more than 30 years, or perhaps even longer. But what these international partners or countries can also help us with is to train or help us train our population. It's very, very important that after the rehabilitation and the reconstruction and things like that, we need to also educate our public as to what to expect, where to settle, where not to settle, and that should be implemented very strictly, because if you see cases like that of Bahrain, 10 years ago there was a flood and the whole lot got, swept away. And then very soon afterwards, the same hotels were built in the middle of the same river. So this is, something that the people who do such things also ought to take responsibility. And as far as the government is concerned, it needs to be very strict in not allowing people in historically flood areas, to settle, to have construction and things like that. So
let me come back
in
to
the
Hamid
future-
sir. Do you think that this would, what's happened as far as these floods? Of course, the devastation is extreme. Of course, the the damage is unprecedented. It's unparalleled. We never expected the kind of damage that we've seen, and of course, its effects will continue. But do you think it will also sensitize us to the issue of climate damage? Things like
Yes.
what Nasir Ali Khan Sahab is talking about. He's saying that, the fact that urban planning, or the fact that we've seen construction on riverbeds, things that can make a difference, little details, little, our own safety measures, our own preparedness. You think that it will sensitize us to the issue at large? You think it will make a difference to our response to it, our preparedness at large, and seeing climate damage in a new light, because I think the seriousness of it has unfortunately been underlined in a manner like never before.
Yes, definitely, Mahrukh. It should be a very strong wake-up call for the government and for the policy makers as well, that they have to not only be prepared themselves for any future disaster like that, rather they have to introduce some kinds of laws, some kind of strict rules and regulations implemented in those areas where there are high risks of flooding. And on the other hand, I was talking to one of our experts from WAPDA, and he was saying that there is one of the biggest cause was that it was 80% houses especially in south of Punjab and others were built only with the mud and the soil, and they swept away with the heavy rains as well. So that it needs to be considered, that there should be a proper construction with the concrete or the supporting elements. I'll tell you, there is always in such kind of disaster, there are 3 stages which is defined as 3 R's, like rescue, restoration and rehabilitation. We are at the stage of rescue at the moment. Now we're going to be entered at the stage of restoration, where we have to make sure that it will not be like before. The situation should not be like that. Rather, there should be properly measures should be taken towards how to handle, in terms of very heavy rains, how to handle in terms of flooding, how to handle other kind of calamities due to the environmental changes. And then when we talk about the rehabilitation, yes, there has to be a considered relocation of the rehabilitation sites. It cannot be placed at the same place. We have to see what kind of river flow is there. Very interesting fact, I have been told that because of the Pakistan's geography, when water flows towards the south of Punjab or towards the Sindh province, the slope of the water gets very very less slope. It's not as slope as it should be normally. So the water going towards the sea, we have only one source of drainage of water in Pakistan, that is Indus River. And Indus River, geographically, it's not that much slope. That's why the water holds in shape of ponds or in shapes of lakes. And that was the reason. If you look into it, KPK and Swat, they swept out because there was so much slope that although there was so much rain, but the water fall down and came towards the Punjab province. And so all the geographical experts have to consider what kind of construction, what kind of infrastructure is required in those areas where the water will stay in case of heavy rains, because there is a less slope.
Let me go to Nyasab. Nyasab, you in the same question to you, as far as our preparedness is concerned, how hopeful are you, as far as our next, because we can't really rule out, unfortunately, that there won't be a repeat of what's happened as far as our climate damage is concerned, the effect of climate change is concerned. What we can do is prepare, and that preparedness, what are your expectations now from Pakistan?
Well, as I was saying, this is the third huge disaster that we faced since the start of this century. And then there have been many smaller ones like floods in 2011, 12, drought, this, that. And, a sort of a skeletal structure has come in. There is a National Disaster Management Authority, there are the provincial PDMA, and then there are supposed to be, the district level, and then there are supposed to be village level, structures in place. But, they just remain skeletal. They are not, vibrant agencies, organizations which are well prepared to, really deal with a huge disaster like this. And we've had so many trainings and capacity buildings. I've seen them with my own eyes, literally all these provincial and national disaster management authorities grow over the years.
You're saying that we need to work on capacity building. We have institutions, we have bodies on a national level, also district level. But as far as local, we need more organizations on a local level, do we not, who can respond to this kind of a crisis?
Yeah, I mean, even district level doesn't have authority. As I explained, it's, one assistant commissioner handling 6-7 other functions, and with no expertise, no equipment, no team. So that's where the really weak thing is. And then the early warning coming down from the Met Department down to the provincial authorities and then down to the district authorities. The system hardly works. Then the rescue operations. There are village committees in most villages now. They've been given small amount of equipment by NGOs, but then the person leaves, the equipment gets lost. So there needs to be drills before say starting from May, June, before the rainy season. So that from the NDMA down to the province to the district to the village level, there are drills, there is repeated communication, and everybody is ready. The stockpiles are ready in case something happens. But none of this happens, and it happens in places like Bangladesh. I visited, the cyclone-prone areas. They have shelters in place where even animals can go. The village committees work properly. They have, communication channels with the district authorities, but none of that really works in Pakistan. And even now you see at the peak of this disaster, the political crisis is still more important for, even the government and even the opposition. So what else can you talk about? I mean, this is just, something way down the priority list. And then disaster, you are talking about climate change. Just remember, this is just in the middle of a disaster. Even in normal years, climate change is costing us billions in terms of loss of topsoil, in terms of the coastal areas being lost, in terms of heat waves. So it's so many issues, and there's just no preparation.
Let me come back to you. Nasir Saab, I want to talk more about what you see in terms of the international response, but in terms of our embassies. We've also seen the UAE, trying to raise funds as far as trying to do what they can to raise funds in this crisis. But overall, in terms of the response of our different consulates or the overall international community, we've seen some aid come in. But where do you think we lack particularly in that quarter?
Well, as far as the appeal is concerned, yes, all our missions abroad ought to make people not only aware but also request them for donations. So that would normally include the expat Pakistani community over there. But apart from that, certain companies that have stakes in Pakistan, that have been doing business here for many, many years. So in their respective countries, our ambassadors, our consuls generals should approach these companies and ask them for assistance in this regard. But another point that I'd like to make, it is a huge catastrophe. And as I said, no one could be prepared for it. But, just to reiterate, creating awareness and having strict zoning laws as to where people can build or not is very, very important. But one of the positives that you will see out of these massive floods in the next 2 to 3 years is that, a lot of water, moisture will be retained in the soil, and in the coming years you will get much larger areas having much better crops. The other positive thing is when a flood like this comes, it brings with it silt and alluvium, which is very fertile soil. So on a positive note, I expect that in the next year and 2 years, we will have bumper crops, and, we would have even possibly exportable surpluses.
But what happens, Ambassador Saab, what happens to the kind of loss that we are seeing? The loss to lives, the loss to livelihoods, and overall the effect to economy, the kind
Absolutely.
that's something
the effect,
Ji.
Yeah, the effect to the economy has not fully manifested itself yet. Because you see, as you now come to the reality that a lot of crops have been destroyed, and then with the conflict in Ukraine, overall global food shortages expected. So that will take another 3 months actually to manifest itself, and that is going to cause a tremendous poverty, tremendous unemployment, and a lot of disappointment, you see. But
because when you
at
talk
the end
about,
of the day,
we're talking about a world that is riddled with their own issues. We talk about, like I said, like you said also, and earlier we spoke about a post-COVID reality, Ukraine, the war, Russia-Ukraine war also. Those are all realities. We're also seeing overall, even developed nations suffering from inflation. In that environment, to expect the kind of help that we need and the kind of help perhaps we're entitled to is a little optimistic.
Well, trying to claim that, because we are responsible for maybe 0.4% of the world's historic, emissions blamed for climate change, as opposed to that 0.4%, countries like the US are polluting 21.5%. China is a little bit behind, and so on. But, this is a debate that will go on forever. And when is it that people will start listening to us? When is it that the world will become more just and people will be given justice? This is something that, in fact, is a soundbite that comes out of Antonio Guterres' visit here. Because he said Pakistan needs massive financial support, and it's not a matter of generosity. It is a matter of justice. So this is a point that you were trying to make, and I'm glad that the Secretary General has made such statements.
Right. Let me come back to you. We have with us Dr. Amjad Saqib, who's founder, chairman of Quwwat Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Amjad. The response of the international community on the one side, and we've also seen organizations like you who are working relentlessly to help people who are suffering today. Overall, what do you expect as far as, of course, rescue is that phase that we are in at this time, but we want to go and of course move into relief and rehabilitation. But the kind of help what response have you had overall from within Pakistan, from outside Pakistan? What are your thoughts on that and your experience with it?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very interesting debate which you have, initiated. The point is, I have no hope at all from the international community. There's no justice. There is absolutely, there is no altruistic support from any nation. All support is critical and with some strings. So this is my first impression, that we should behave like a self-reliant nation. We should, we can live in poverty, but we shouldn't be begging from the international community. This is their responsibility to realize that what kind of attitude they have shown. This is all colonialism. This is, post-colonialism. What have these big nations done with the poor people of Africa and Asia and Latin America? Do you think that they have changed their minds? They have changed their hearts? Absolutely none. So my first thing is that we shouldn't be asking any money. We shouldn't be asking for the justice. We should be self-reliant. Number
But
one.
Dr.
Number
Amjad,
two,
of course, I
our
mean, you're
own,
right.
our
You're
own.
right that, of course, the dignified response would be not to be asking. But the point is, are
Yes.
we really at that, are we in that position not to do so? And do you think that within our
Yes.
country, we can amass the kind of help that is needed at this time? Because according to Antonio Guterres, it's to the tune of $30 billion.
No, the point is that is the real issue. That is the real challenge. We should prepare our nation. We should be getting ready. If 10 million people have been devastated by these floods, 110 million people have not. So, out of if 1 crore people have been damaged, 21 crore people have not been damaged by these things. So why can't 21 people, take the hand of one person and help him? This is how we should, educate our nation. This is how we should have created a bond of solidarity between haves and have-nots. This is how we have just worked between, in order to create two kinds of Pakistans. Why have we done this? Why haven't we been able to share the resources and created a reciprocity of economy? This is the basic thing. Nations are not built in 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, 50 years, yes. But with the start of nation building should be from this basic fact that this land belongs to all of us. These resources belong all of us. Lillahi ma fis samawat, lahu ma fis samawat. Whatever is in this universe belongs to God. And whatever is in this world is, for the God. If we are a Muslim, we must not forget the logical foundations of this nation. Why was this country created? This was created because a large section of society was feeling that their integrity, their faith, their financial condition, their social status is at stake. So I don't believe in we represent the people of Pakistan. We're a non-profit NGO, and our all support is from the people of Pakistan. So far, we have served more than 35,000 families. We plan to build 100,000 homes for these people, and all this money will come from the people of Pakistan. Maybe they are living here, maybe they are living abroad, but this is against the principles of dignity that we always say that live with dignity, and then we go to the international community and seek their support. What kind of independence is this? What kind of honor, living with honor and dignity? So my argument is absolutely different. We shouldn't be asking for world community. Yes, we should be givers. We should be making all our efforts to make this world a happy place to live in. If somebody comes here and gives it with altruism, with love, with compassion, that might be accepted. But if somebody comes with stings, critical stings, that should not be.
Right, fair enough. Thank you so much for your very valuable input. Please stay with us. I want to go to Dr. Niaz with what you've just pointed out. Niaz Sahab, I hope you've been listening to what Dr. Amjad said. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, of course, one would like to remain dignified. One would like to be able to self-help, so to speak, as far as Pakistan is concerned. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you agree with what Dr. Amjad has said? He's saying that don't ask and do what you can and build your nation. He's also said that we should be able to help ourselves and we should be able to self-sustain.
Well, I mean, that would be the right approach if, this disaster did not have international, connections. And as we've been discussing, the main reason why this is happening is because of, global climate change. for which, as everybody has pointed out, we only contribute 0.5%. And even that 0.5% is not produced by the 33 million who've been badly damaged. This is mostly by, people like you and me in the cities who produce even that 0.5 million. So, they have contributed almost nothing to it, but they are suffering the cost. So I think it's our right. It's not about asking for charity, begging for charity. It is asking for damages caused to us by the larger nations like the U.S., China, European Union, even the Gulf nations. They are the ones that are primarily responsible for causing climate change. And I think it's not something we can do alone, but obviously we should, connect with other larger disaster-prone countries like Bangladesh, India, Philippines, Indonesia, and, raise this issue to the UN at the global level that, there have to be climate reparations. There's always been talk of colonial reparations and then imperial reparations, and now there is the need for climate reparations. So, we can't just keep saying that, we somehow deal with it on our own. Obviously, we should be able to do that if it was just, a local thing. So I think we need to work on that, but then also we need to recognize our own weaknesses. That whatever resources we do have, we haven't really focused them on the poorest of the poor, and a lot of it is on defense or other expenditures. So we need to come up a sort of a compact with the richer nations that if you give us the money, we will commit to developing a very equitable and a fair economy which focuses on the poor. So every year we should get some sort of a debt relief, or based on our last year's performance of developing this kind of an economy. But otherwise, we don't really have enough resources on our own.
Let me go to Dr. Hameed. Dr. Hameed, of course, one important factor is that these are the injustice of it. One, of course,
Exactly.
what Dr. Amjad has said. I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. Of course, we should be dignified. Of course, we should be able to self-sustain. Of course, we should be able to help each other. Of course, we should be able to extend ourselves. Each person should be able to extend themselves to that, to be able to help the people who have been affected. And I think he puts it very, very aptly, very, succinctly right there. But then again, the point is that realistically speaking, one, the preparedness as a whole, we could have done better in that department. Two, as far as the fact that we did little to contribute to the kind of damage that we've seen, which is very important. So considering those factors, getting the kind of help that should come our way, and we've had even the UN Secretary General say that it's something that rightfully should happen. And then Paris Agreement or the Green Climate Fund, all of those things, where is the world on those issues? Why is the world reneging on those pledges that were made under these agreements? That's an important question.
Yes, MAHRUKH, actually, I mean, Dr. Amjad have pointed out in a different way, but I say it exposes the dual standard and hypocrisy of the Western and modern world, whether it comes to the disputes or issues like Kashmir or other issues, and they have a different standard to resolve that issue while they are resolving the Ukraine issue in a different way. So whether it was the kids of Iraq or whether it's the kids of Ukraine, they cannot treat them the same, because this is the hypocrisy of the modern world, that they are failed to understand and they are failed to take the responsibility as a modern nation, that what is their responsibility. This calamity or this disaster is because of the Western world's unfair treatment and unfair burden on nations like Pakistan. So I understand what Dr. Amjad was saying, that the Pakistanis are very resilient nation. We will come out of it. I know that if there will be no help from the world, inshallah, with the help of God, with the help of Allah, we will come out of it. But it will furthermore expose the Western world. It will furthermore tell us that we need to be more self-reliant. We need to be more cautious that whether it is a matter of in our history, we have seen in 71, we have seen in 2005, we have seen in so many occasions, whenever we need the real help, we just get the peanuts, and we've been, blamed, or we've been asked to do a lot more than what we've been getting it from them. So this is the time when, yes, there is a need of training for the nation building. There is a need of giving a guideline, right guideline to the nation. And yes, Pakistanis across the world are helping them. NGOs, organizations like Dr. Amjad's, there are so many other organizations working on the ground, because we are one of the biggest charitable charity giving nation in the world. And at the time of crisis, Pakistanis will help. Pakistanis within Pakistan and out of Pakistan are helping them. But in the nutshell, it has exposed the Western world, the modern world, and the modern organizations such as W Health organization, such as UNICEF, such as environment agencies and organizations. So this is a kind of a wake up call for the nation, that if anything happens, Pakistani nation has to be together to come out of it. And yes, Pakistani organizations working on the ground, and Pakistani nation has to be come together as a strong nation. Rest of the world does not help you what they should. Their obligation. I just believe that it is their not only moral duty, this is their ethical and lawful duty to help Pakistan, because this all is happening majorly caused by the Western world's carbon emission and environmental damages to the ozone and to everywhere. So if you look into the entire situation, Dr. Amjad was absolutely right that we cannot expect much from the Western world because of their past experience of hypocrisy, dual standards towards the issues of Muslim countries or towards the issues of their own, countries or Europe.
Right. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr.
Thank you,
Hameed
Maya.
Khan
Thank you.
Al-Mashriqi. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Amjad Saqib, thank you for joining us. Nasir Ali Khan Saab, thank you for being with us. Dr. Niaz Murtaza, thank you for your time. Overall, as far as the situation is concerned, of course, on the one hand, it is we should be doing all that we can, and certainly we have seen an unprecedented response from our own people. As far as flood relief is concerned, of course, the government is head to toe immersed in relief efforts. We've seen, of course, as far as across the board effort is concerned, there seems to be only one point agenda, and that is relief for the people, that is help for the people, that is trying to provide as much assistance to those who have been affected by these floods. But on the other hand, of course, one would want the world to own up. One would want the world to realize the injustice of it as far as Pakistan is concerned. In the words of Antonio Guterres, he said that this would be, as far as humanity is concerned, this is a war on nature, and nature has struck back. And of course, for Pakistan, for people, for the world at large, not to respond would be cruel and extremely unjust. And we hope that the world will respond, and we hope that there will be the kind of empathy, the kind of humanity that we would like to see from across the board, all nations, because certainly it seems to be Pakistan has done little to deserve what is happening to its people, to its crop, to their children, and to humanity in Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us today on